Welcome to the AI brief from the YPO Technology Network. I'm Stephen Forte. Something happened this week that the market read as a warning sign, and I think they read it backwards. On today's episode, OpenAI unveils its first custom chip, while tech stocks sell off on fears that the whole thing is a bubble. Why those two stories are actually the same story told from opposite ends, and a closing look at the kind of always-on AI coworker that only exists because the math underneath it changed. Let me start with the news. On June 24th, OpenAI and Broadcom being the chip design giant that quietly powers a huge slice of the world's networking and custom silicon, unveiled OpenAI's first in-house AI chip. They're calling it Jalapeno. And the important word here is not chip, it's inference, quick gloss, because it's the spine of this whole episode. Training a model is the expensive one-time work of teaching it. Inference is the everyday work. Every time someone asks the thing a question, that's inference. It's the electric bill, not the construction loan. Jalapeno is what's called an ASIC, an application-specific integrated circuit, meaning a chip built from scratch to do exactly one job rather than a general-purpose graphics chip bent to the task. And the numbers are real. Broadcom's CEO Hock Tan told Reuters it showed roughly 50% cost efficiency versus standard AI GPUs in early tests, and that it competes favorably with Nvidia's Blackwell, Nvidia's current flagship, and with Google's TPUs, Google's own custom AI chips. They went from blank page to manufacturing tape-out in 9 months, which they're calling the fastest high-performance ASIC development cycle ever. TSMC, the Taiwanese fab that physically makes the world's best chips, builds it. Celestica, a contract manufacturer, builds the servers around it exclusively for OpenAI, deploy at gigawatt scale by the end of this year. Greg Brockman, OpenAI's president, said it plainly. By building more of the stack themselves, they deliver more intelligence at greater efficiency. Now, hold that thought, because while OpenAI was showing off a chip that makes AI cheaper to run, the market was busy deciding AI was too expensive to believe in. Here is the foil. On June 23rd and 24th, we got a global tech rout. The Nasdaq off about 2.2%, the S&P down around 1.4%, Nvidia down roughly 4%, and Alphabet posting its worst single day in over a year. Asia got hit first. South Korea's Kospi fell hard. The fear gauge, the VIX, ticked up to about 17.3. The trigger was a cocktail: fears about the sheer cost of the AI build-out, Fed rate jitters, and a memory chip wobble. Nvidia cut its production forecast for its next chip, Rubin, which prompted SK Hynix to slow its expansion of HBM4, and that's the ultra-fast memory that sits next to AI chips, and pivot back toward ordinary memory. And in the background, OpenAI and Anthropic are both circling what could be among the largest IPOs ever, with the long-term profitability of all this still genuinely unproven. The headlines did what headlines do. They asked in print, is AI one big bubble? So here is the bear case. Stated fairly because it deserves to be stated fairly. The build-out costs are staggering and real. Nobody has shown sustained profit at frontier scale. And there's a wrinkle economists call Jevons paradox, the observation that when something gets cheaper to use, we don't spend less on it. We use so much more of it that total spending goes up. We saw it with steam engines and coal. The bears say AI is the same trap. Every efficiency just gets eaten by more demand. The bill never shrinks, and the build-out never stops. Here is my read. I don't think this is a bubble so much as an overinflated market that's repricing. And the people selling are the ones who haven't yet understood what Jalapeno actually represents. Let me earn that, because it's the kind of claim that's worthless without the math behind it. The one thing technology does over and over with almost boring reliability, it gets cheaper, better, and easier. And the reason it does is not just faster hardware. It's that the software starts generating its own efficiencies on top of the hardware. Both curves compound at once. Look at what's actually happened to the cost of inference. The venture firm AS16Z's tracks something they call LLMflation. For a model of equivalent quality, the cost to run it has fallen about 10x per year for over 3 years. A GPT-3 quality model cost $60 per million tokens, a token being roughly a word, back in November 2021. By late 2024, about 6 cents. That's a thousand-fold drop in 3 years. Stanford's AI index found a GPT 3.5 level system fell about 280x in 2 years. Epic AI puts the median across benchmarks at roughly 50x a year, and since the start of 2024, closer to 200x. And the reason it keeps falling is the part the bear's underweight. It isn't only the chips, it's a stack of software tricks layered on top, mixture of experts. Where a model only wakes up the small slice of itself, it actually needs to answer your question instead of firing up the whole brain for every query. Distillation, where a big model trains a small, fast one. Quantization, where you shrink the math precision and lose almost nothing. Jalapeno is the hardware bending the curve, and mixture of experts is the software bending it from the other side, both at once. Now, to the bears' credit, and I'll give it to them straight, Jevons is real and it cuts. Enterprise AI bills are up about 320% year over year, even as the per token cost fell that 280x. Both of those are true at the same time. We covered this a few weeks back. Cheaper tokens, bigger bills. The bill keeps showing up. But here is the distinction that the sell-off is missing. The bear case assumes that because demand keeps rising, the build-out has to rise with it in a straight line. Linear, forever, more concrete, and more gigawatts in lockstep with more usage. That's the misread. Demand for compute is absolutely going up, but the growth is not linear because efficiency keeps bending the curve underneath the demand. We get more efficient at the chip, more efficient at the routing, more efficient at serving the model. A chip like Jalapeno with performance per watt substantially better than today's best doesn't feed the linear story. It breaks it. Here's why this matters to you specifically. Watch the split that's opening up. Commodity inference, the everyday classifying, summarizing, drafting, routing, is approaching near free, well under 40 cents per million tokens. Meanwhile, frontier reasoning and the hard thinking work holds its premium because that compute doesn't compress nearly as fast. That split is a roadmap. Picture a $200 million industrial distributor in Ohio. Within a couple of years, roughly 80% of that company's automations, invoice processing, support triage, document classification, will run on a small, efficient model sitting inside its own network, on hardware it controls at a cost that rounds to nothing. Only the highest reasoning jobs go up to the expensive frontier in the cloud. If I were sitting in your seat this quarter, I would not be asking whether AI is a bubble. I'd be asking which 80% of my workflows are commodity grade and which 20% genuinely need a frontier brain. Because that's the line your cost structure will eventually fall on. The companies that map it early stop renting everything at frontier prices for work a local model does for free. Cheaper, better, easier. It has never once stopped being true. The market just forgot it for 48 hours, which brings me to the demand side of the exact same coin and one short closing texture. On June 23rd, Anthropic, the maker of the Claude models, launched Claude Tag. It's a shared, persistent Claude that lives inside a Slack channel as what they call a multiplayer teammate. One Claude per channel carries context across days with an ambient mode that surfaces information proactively rather than waiting to be asked and executes tasks in the background. The governance is genuinely grown up. Admins define scoped agent identities, so your sales Claude can't hand its memory to your engineering Claude, plus tool access and a monthly spend cap default $1,000 up to $1 million. Anthropic says about 65% of its own product team's code is already written by an internal version of this. Here's the tie-in. A teammate that runs constantly, all day, watching every channel. That is a brand new class of workload. It was economically absurd 2 years ago. The coworker that never sleeps only pencils out because the per token cost fell off a cliff. That is the build out and the efficiency curve in one Slack channel. The cost falls, and that's precisely what unlocks the demand that makes people fear the cost. Both things are true. They were always going to be. That is the YPO Tech Network AI brief for Thursday, June 25th. I am Stephen Forte. If this was useful, send it to a fellow member. I will be back Friday with more. Until then, stay sharp.